Okay, right. So let's, without further ado, let's dive into the this next module. We're going to talk about, and I'm going to be sharing with you recording techniques 101. Right, a sort of the little bit of a primer first, lah, before we go into the more heavier, more serious stuff. We're going to record vocals only on week 4, but I just want to talk about this topic because it's going to apply even though you're recording vocals. Some of the principles is going to apply whether you're recording an instrument or whether you're recording vocals. Okay, so preparing for a vocal session, a couple of points that you want to always remember, and I feel is very important, right? Especially if you are the producer. Going back to last week's, if you are a producer, you need to be prepared, you need to be organized, right? And you need to be you need to have and take the leadership position. Now, number one, does the vocalist have the lyrics written down? Have they written the lyrics down? Now, if you're working on a song, all right, for example, if the vocalist is not the songwriter, lah, make sure that they always get the lyrics a few days in advance, along with the instrumental track. Provide them, let them have this, let them listen to it so that they can practice, they can rehearse, they will know all of this. Don't only, like, the day before morning, they only give them the lyrics or something like that, okay? So this allows them to practice, right? And also to figure out, right? The vocalist needs to figure out, they also need to practice, they need to do a little homework, right? Of how to approach the song, okay? Always prepare this in advance. Now, at the day of the session, you would want to print out the lyrics in big, easy to read fonts, okay? It's very annoying sometimes, I'm sure it will be if you get the lyric sheet, but the font size like 12 times New Roman 12. How to see lah? You need at least a big font lah, right? So that you can see it clearly. All right. So I got this image here. This is like the copy of the lyric sheet of "Smells Like Teen Spirit" signed by Kurt Cobain. Very cool. All right. Now here's another one. It's even better. Right? Even better. If the vocalist memorizes lyrics, that's actually even better. Okay. If the vocalist can actually memorize the lyrics, this means that they're not reading or they're not looking at the lyrics when they're recording. I feel that's even better. That's even a step even further, because then they can really focus on delivering the emotion and the feel of the song, right? They can really convey the meaning behind the lyrics, right? Because sometimes if they're still looking at the lyrics, right, it can sound like they're basically singing and reading off the lyric sheet lah, right? Sometimes it comes across like that. Okay, but nevertheless, it's still good to have the lyric sheet in there, because sometimes you can still put it up in front of the vocalist, right? Have them memorize it, but have it there just as a visual guide and a visual reference lah, in case he or she needs to remember something. Okay, so do prepare this in advance. Obviously, set up the microphone and headphones, right? It seems very obvious, but have all this. What the important thing is, have all this set up in advance, okay? Like, so here's a little picture of a singer who seems to be very happy. Adjust the height and angle of the microphone to fit the singer. That's very important. It's again very simple, and common sense. Before the singer arrives, right? Before the vocalist arrives, you yourself should already roughly set the rough level, right? Preamp gain level. If you're using a condenser microphone, turn on your phantom power, make sure all of that is running already, right? Don't wait till your singer put a headphone, and then you turn on the phantom power. You're going to give the vocalist a big shock, okay, right? Because they're going to hear boom, a pop. It sounds like common sense to us, but you'll be surprised. It does happen, okay, right? Especially if you're with the more inexperienced persons lah, okay? All right, turn all this stuff out, set roughly a preamp gain level, right? Get it ready. So ensure that both the recording and monitoring signal path is working. Again, common sense, but these are things that you want to make sure lah, right? Make sure that the recording path, you are getting signal, right? Make sure that the monitoring path, right? Make sure that the singer, right, can hear the music, can hear themselves. Now, obviously, in certain cases, right, and generally speaking, you would want to have a pop screen because you want to reduce like plosives, right? So, for example, plosives that they know that p, b, t, that kind of sound, which will sometimes distort the microphone. And right, choose the right mic for the singer. Okay. Number two, right? This is the second point. Now, when it comes to singers, right, there is sometimes a bit of a question with whether you want to give them reverb or no reverb. Now, some singers, right, are more comfortable hearing a little bit of reverb on their voices. You know, if sometimes you get a singer, sometimes they will request for some reverb. Okay, if it makes them feel better, if it makes them feel a bit more comfortable, then provide them lah. Okay. But generally speaking, it's a recommended approach, and I personally recommend it. I recommend that you record, right, singers with no reverb at all. That's my recommendation. And you know, if you are working with vocalists and all that, try to sort of encourage them to learn how to work without reverb. And there's a very good reason why. Now, reverb will sometimes kind of cover up, you know, the little bit of the dynamics. Without reverb, it trains them to actually control their dynamics a little bit more, a little bit better, because they immediately hear how their voice sounds like, how their dynamics actually sound like. Okay, reverb actually sometimes covers it, so it makes it easier for them to sing. But to help them improve to help the singer improve, right, I highly recommend, right, try recording with no reverb. Personally, you would want to insert the reverb only on the monitoring signal path, right? So that means, right, you want the reverb only for the singer, right? I personally, when I'm recording reverb, I don't want to hear the reverb at all. I want to hear it dry. Because again, right, you as the engineer or you as the producer, when you are recording, you want to hear exactly how the singer is delivering, in terms of the dynamics, in terms of the pitching, in terms of everything. You want to hear exactly raw how it sounds. Okay, you don't want to be like covering in reverb to sound like a toilet or Batu Caves. Okay, all right, because again, it makes it sound better immediately. I love to hear it raw. So try to insert the reverb only in the monitoring signal path. Okay, this is an example of a cheap external reverb that you can buy, that you can use. So number three, point three, okay? Again, prepare your tracks. Check your playback, okay? Again, try to do this ahead of time lah. Check that the headphone mix and playback levels are comfortable, all right? Have this all prepared ahead of time if possible. But also when the vocalist is there, right, make sure you ensure that his or her headphone mix is good, right? Always check, all right, and make sure that their mix is good. Same thing, last week when we talked about a drummer, I always, before I start doing any takes, we run through his headphone mix, make sure he's hearing the backing tracks, make sure he's hearing his drums, make sure that he's hearing the click, make sure that it's all good, he's all good and comfortable, then only we jalan and do a take lah. Set up a customized mix if possible. Last week, as you guys saw, right, I set up a different kind of a mix within the software control, right, for my interface. I have a different mix setup that was set up for the monitors, and I have a different mix set up just for when we are listening inside the control room lah. Here is for example of like a headphone remote mixing station. Okay, so for example over there lah, a headphone amp that we use. Preparing for a vocal session, you want to make the vocalist comfortable, obviously, right? Unless you want to do the reverse psychology thing, which I explained to you last week. Some odd situations, right? You want to do the reverse psychology. You want to make the vocalist very uncomfortable. You want to make them tired. You want to make them angry or something like that. You can try lah, right? It depends on whether you succeed or not. There's no guarantee. Okay. Generally speaking, you want to always make them feel very comfortable. Okay. So this is a very comfortable looking singer taking a selfie. Got candles, got scented candles and stuff like that. All right, I don't recommend the scented candles actually, because actually the vapor and the fumes is actually can be a little bit harmful, not only towards the human person, towards your lungs, but actually can be bad for the equipment, can be bad for your mics and everything. Okay, because it can leave, right, the residue, okay, on equipment. So probably not scented candles. Okay, now and there is a very important point, keep unnecessary persons out of the studio, right, out of the session. I strongly recommend, right, whenever you're recording, all right, you just get the people that are involved, only the very, very important people. Nowadays the trend is, especially you're working with some more famous singers, they come with their PA lah, they come with their manager lah, they come with their auntie lah, their fan base that they come with their photographer lah, videographer lah, and whatever lah, auntie, uncle, grandfather, grandmother, everyone will come in the session. And it's actually a distraction. It's really a distraction. Now, if I'm a studio owner, actually I'll be very happy because with the distractions, what happens is it take longer. They charge them more. Okay. But on the other hand, but if I'm a producer, if I have all these distractions and unnecessary people around, they actually kind of ruining the vibe. They're distracting the singer, they're distracting me, they're distracting people from doing the work. Okay. So now in the studios, right? Usually we want to keep it, keep the crowd control lah, right? If people are not involved in the session, okay, ask them to wait. If you have a lounge, you have a pantry, ask them to wait there lah, chill there, wait there, okay? Right, don't be inside the control room or recording room being a distraction. Right, you want to create a vibe where that relaxes the vocalist, relaxes or if you're a musician, right, relaxes the musician. You inspire confidence, okay, right? Use dim mood lighting, aromatherapy scents, except for candles. Don't use candles. You can use the other types of air filters and all that. That's fine. So ask if they have any preferred refreshments, right? Ask them, hey, is there anything you like? Water? Is there you like tea? You like coffee or something like that? Warm water, for example, tea with honey lemon. Okay, let's move on. So, still under preparing for vocal session. Point number 5 here. Don't wear out the vocalist. In my experience, singers typically deliver their best takes early, within the first hour or so. Maybe not the very first warm-up. If your session starts dragging into 3 hours, 2-3 hours already, the vocal cords, the human voice is a muscle, okay? It's a living thing. It grows tired, it gets worn out, okay? Don't tire them out doing unnecessary things. Testing mic lah, preamp combinations lah, let's change this mic and all that. As I explained last week, unless you have an unlimited budget and you have all this equipment lah. If you're going to do this, right, if you're going to go through this, if you have the budget in a big studio and do that, try and set and reserve this and do this at a different period of time, because if you have the singer testing out the different mics, everything, by the time you already tested and find what you think is the best sound, by that time the vocalist is already tired already, the voice is already tired and worn out. So the whole exercise gets defeated, okay? Now, be ready and always record. Even during the practice takes, right? Always be recording. Because sometimes you never know. Sometimes during the practice run when they're warming up, magic happens, right? That becomes the keeper take, So even though the singer, and sometimes this can be a psychological thing as well, you tell the singer, okay, let's just practice only, okay? Practice only, record. Because sometimes during the practice run, they are most relaxed, most comfortable. It's a very, very funny thing. Then when they start recording, okay, let's do take one, take one, then suddenly tense, they're like, pressure already. Then you see they're a little bit different. So I always joke out with singers, okay, let's do practice take one. Okay. So psychologically I try to trick them lah, even though they know I'm recording, right? This is considered to help them feel that it's doing a practice run. Now, you want to reserve the loudest, right, and all the hardest parts, right? Generally speaking, for last during a session. So if you have a song which technically is very, very challenging, the highest parts, the highest notes, or the loudest parts, or if you're dealing with metal or metalcore or this kind of stuff, you want to deal all the screaming parts, the growl and all that, keep that for last, keep that for later, because you don't want to blow out the vocal at the start of the session and then you cannot record already for the rest of the session, okay? Because the singer's voice is already blown up. Point 6, back to again the psychological and the psychology part lah. I recommend that you always encourage and provide positive reinforcement. Excellent, great job, right? Sounds good, right? Be always positive as a producer and engineer, right? When you're talking to them, all right, man, that sounds good. That's a good take, right? Use these kind of phrases, these kind of magic words lah, right? So even though it's not so good, right? You say, if it's not so good, don't say that's terrible. Don't say that lah, right? Say, not bad. Right? Use these kind of words, right, to encourage them. Not bad, but I feel you can do better. So that's your hint. That's your hint and your psychology of knowing that, okay, that take wasn't that good, but you have the confidence, right? And you want to inspire, you want to give them confidence that they can do better, okay? Now, Avoid using negative sounding words. So, for example, don't go and say, oh, that's bad, that's terrible. Unless you are you know the singer very well, you have developed such a close relationship that, can you can be critical, right? Say, hey, thorough lah, that's terrible lah. But you say in a positive, in a friendly way lah, and then you have a little laugh about it. Oh yeah. Sorry, I know I can do better. Right, the vocalist will give you that feedback. Okay, again, use your wisdom, use your knowledge when you're dealing with it. But generally, you want to avoid using negative sounding words. Compliment them when they nail a great take. All right, whenever they do something good, or even if they nail it was a bad take, but there was a part of it which was really good, maybe one line which sounded really great, right? Compliment them. Always, give them some kind of positive reinforcement. Make them feel like a star, okay? Treat them like a star, okay? Right. Number 7, and this brings us back to making decisions as a producer. This is a question which you sometimes have to ask when you get into a vocal recording session. Now, is your song really ready? Is the melody, are the lyrics flowing right? You don't want to get into a vocal recording session if somehow you still haven't, the melody is still not firm, or the lyrics are still a little bit unsure. Now, sometimes naturally in the process, maybe adjustments may happen last minute lah, on the spot. Oh, you feel like changing, or maybe you want to change the lyric. Yes, sometimes that kind of happen as well. You would want all these things to be really ready first before you jump into a recording session, okay? Into a vocal session. So usually, with vocals, don't pressure the vocalist lah, right? Right. It's different when it comes to bass or guitar instrument, right? These are usually the parts are already determined. It's very easy to change things on the spot. But with vocals, it's a little bit different. Is the key arrangement suitable for a singer? Again, going back to last week's point, right? Your pre-production. Do you do a pre-pro properly or not? Right? Have you gone through? You checked with the singer. Is there in the right key? If any time that the answer to that question, right, is your song really ready, is no, right? Consider rescheduling the session to another time. Give the singer, right, give him or her a little bit more time to prepare, okay? Right, so you don't want to compromise the vocal session just because everything you need to we need to get it done by a certain time, okay? Now, obviously, these are things you as a producer need to balance. And again, back to last week when I was talking about, producer, sometimes you must learn to say no lah, right? If you are working with a band, with an artist, and then you get to a point where, hey, the lyrics are not right yet, right? Tell them, say that, hey, no, your lyrics are not good enough. Let's work it, let's work all this around, all this stuff before we start recording the vocals lah, right? So be the one to make the decision, okay? Sometimes you have to be able to say no as well. Okay, let's go on. Moving on, choosing the right mic. Here we go. Now, most vocal recordings, right, use a large diaphragm condenser, right, or LDC for short. Small diaphragm condensers, SDC, and dynamic mics, right? These are also very viable options as well. For me, when you talk about microphones, right, there's either a good mic or a bad mic. There's no such thing, to me, there's no such thing as say, oh, vocal mic only used for vocal. No, you can always use a vocal mic to record a lot of things, right? As I mentioned last week, when I was in Synchro Sound, we actually used the Neumann U87, which everyone associates being a vocal mic, to mic the kick drum, right? Right? You can always use it. It's a good microphone. You can use it to record any kind of different sources. And it doesn't mean that if you use like a simple dynamic mic like a SM57, that you cannot record nice vocals. Bono, U2, right? Uses I think SM57, I think. Prince also, right? They all record their vocals with just a dynamic mic in the control room, right? Not using like an expensive condenser mic or something like that. It's recorded using very, very inexpensive microphones. And the Shure SM7B is also another very popular option for recording vocals. That's a dynamic microphone that's originally used for broadcast purposes. So now, when we're recording vocals, Cardioid is obviously the most commonly used polar pattern. Okay, so last week's topic, again, refer to last week's slide for microphone and their polar patterns. Okay, because its directionality helps to reject the room reflections or spill coming up from the sound source, in this case the vocal. Omni has actually a more open and natural sound, so you can also sometimes use Omni if you want, provided your room, you don't have a lot of noise or kind of too much ambience in your room, okay? Because Omni is going to pick up from all directions equally, you see. So it's less prone to tonal changes, right? Like due to the position change, if the vocalist moves around a lot, it's less prone. And one thing about Omni, okay, remember there is no proximity effect, okay? It's another point to remember, right? Only cardioid, only directional patterns have the proximity effect. Okay, now figure of 8 can be useful when recording a singer who plays and also sing acoustic guitar at the same time, because the null, right, the null, which is the 90 degrees and the 270 degrees, the sides of a figure of 8, for example, a ribbon mic, aim that null towards the guitar, and you'll be surprised, okay, all right, how little of the guitar you will pick up. The rejection from a figure of 8 pattern is very, very good. Okay, obviously the cardioid pattern is the one on the left, the omni is in the middle, and the figure of 8. Generally speaking, you would want to match the tonality of the mic, right, with the voice. For example, a warm sounding mic, you want to match it with a bright sounding voice, someone who's got a bright tone, and vice versa, right? If you have a bright sounding mic with someone who is like, a little bit more warmer kind of a voice, right? You want to bring it out. You want to match it. Now, again, it's not saying that you have to do it this way. If you want to do a bright mic with a very bright sounding vocalist, you can also. It's nothing wrong with it, right? If it sounds good to you, you can always do it as well, right? But you have to judge, right? If you use a bright mic with a very, very bright, harsh sounding vocalist, it may sometimes sound harsh, okay? Or sometimes you get too much sibilance. Sibilance is the S kind of a sound, right? Sometimes if you match it in incorrectly, then you get that, right? So you have to judge that. So it's not usually a case of good mic versus bad mic. It's like, oh, this is an expensive good microphone versus the bad microphone, right? In the example, for example, as I mentioned, you have an U87 and a cheap dynamic microphone like a SM57, for example. But rather, which is more suitable for the application? Which sounds better or sounds right for the song or the style or the production that you are doing, okay? So either is it a suitable mic or unsuitable, okay? It can be the most expensive microphone in the world, expensive tube microphone, but you're working with a vocalist that's doesn't match the microphone, is not suitable also. Now having said that, now a lot of the modern mic designs nowadays, right, tend to lean towards a more neutral sound. Okay, they a little more neutral, a little bit more accurate, and which can work well with a wider variety, a wider range of voices lah. Now, obviously, when it comes to a lot of people, most of us who are into home recording, obviously you can't afford to have a extensive mic collection like a recording studio lah. Right? You can't have that, right? Most of the time you only have one, or the most one condenser and one dynamic. So in this kind of cases, you want to pick your microphone, right? Maybe you want to invest, you want to choose a microphone which again more towards a neutral sounding microphone, something a little more flat that focuses more on accuracy, because it's going to be a little bit more versatile, right? Not only you can record different type of voices, but you can also record different type of sound sources, maybe guitars, maybe acoustic guitar, electric guitar, any other kind of sound source which you want to record, and it will work well with more variety type of sounds and voices lah. Wait, but if you're only going to be recording yourself, okay, then by all means go ahead and pick and test the mic which sounds best to you lah. Okay. Now moving on, recording with a DI box. Alright, so this is an example. So the term direct box, okay, or DI, okay, is short for direct injection. Okay, direct injection box. Okay, so that's what actually DI means, direct injection. So what is a DI box actually? Okay, it's the actual technical definition. It converts a high Z, high impedance instrument, okay, all right, or line level signal, okay, and again, these kind of levels we talk about in the future topic, to a low Z, low impedance mic level signal. So we know DI box, you take usually a normal guitar cable, a 1/4 inch cable, right? You plug it in, the output is always a mic cable, it's always an XLR mic. Passive instrument pickups, so for example, you know, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass, okay, right? These usually deal high Z, right? High impedance, okay? So high impedance usually because of the pickups right now. So DIs, they also come in two different forms. You have your passive and you have your active DIs. Okay, so the radial JDI just now is an example of a passive one. This is an example of an active DI. Okay, it's more of a preamp and a DI lah. It's built in. So benefits of a passive DI. Number one, it does not require power to make them work. Passive always means that, okay, there's no power to it. Okay, so you don't need the power supply, you don't need phantom power, you don't need battery or something like that or anything like that. So it uses transformers, okay, which can help to eliminate noise due to interference or bad grounding. It's one of the benefits of using a DI, even though a lot of interfaces nowadays you can always just plug straight in. But personally, I always found the results to be better if you have a DI by itself, all right? And then you output the XLR into the mic input of the interface. So now transformers, what they do is they saturate and they don't distort easily. So this means it can handle high output levels, all right, okay, without clipping. It's very hard to clip or distort a DI box lah, okay, a passive, and more specifically a passive DI, okay. Now, so active DI on the other hand, it's also got some other benefits itself. So obviously active DI here will need phantom power, or it needs maybe a battery lah. Active DIs, right, they usually have a built-in buffer, or they call it a unity gain amplifier, all right. So this can help low output instruments. So maybe something that has very, very low output, low levels, an active DI can sort of help to. Doesn't help to boost the gain. It helps to preserve it, right? It's more of that. Active DIs will work a little bit better with acoustic instrument pickups, right? So, but again, there's no right or wrong. You can always use a passive DI also to record with the acoustic instrument pickups as well. There's no right, no wrong lah. So that brings us to the end of Recording Techniques 101. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic. All right, I'm going to explain a little bit more about some post-production techniques related to drums.